In this video, I'm sharing 11 essential races every fantasy writer should know. These are some of the classic building blocks of fantasy, but I'll also show you how I like to use them in my own stories to add tension, drama, or emotional weight. And let me jump straight into it with a race that might seem like comic relief, but with the right touch can become the heart and soul of your world: dwarves. Dwarves are more than just grumpy bearded blacksmiths in my opinion. They represent tradition, craftsmanship, and unbreakable loyalty. But their stubbornness can just as easily lead to self-destruction. I found that when I lean into these traits, dwarves stop feeling like side characters and they start taking center stage. In one of my stories, a clan of dwarves refused to forge a vital magical weapon because of a centuries-old grudge. This decision turned them into key players, forcing my protagonists to navigate dwarven politics while challenging their own assumptions about honor. Suddenly, dwarves weren't just background characters, they became the heart of my plot. When I create dwarves now, I usually start by thinking about their core values. What do they hold sacred? Is it family loyalty, the perfection of their craft, or maybe a deep-rooted distrust of outsiders? This shapes how they interact with the world and what kind of conflicts they are drawn into. I also like tying dwarves directly into my plot. Rather than just having them exist in the background, I'll give them a critical role. Maybe they are the only ones who know how to access a forgotten city, or have the ancient knowledge my protagonist needs to move forward. When they have something at stake, their presence becomes essential. But where dwarves are grounded in tradition and craftsmanship, elves take a different approach. One deeply rooted in their connection to time and magic. Now, elves are often depicted as beings of timeless beauty and ancient wisdom, but they can be so much more than graceful archers or mysterious spellcasters. What makes them fascinating isn't just their magic or their longevity, if you ask me. It's how those things weigh on them over time. Imagine a society where time moves differently. For elves, a decade might feel like a fleeting moment, while a human's entire lifetime barely registers. This perspective shapes everything about them, from their relationships to their sense of purpose. Some elves might spend centuries perfecting a single skill, while others grow weary of watching the world change around them. Culturally, elves often have strong ties to nature or celestial cycles. Forest-dwelling elves may worship ancient trees, while skybound elves chart the stars as part of the rituals. This connection can influence a variety of aspects, from politics and magic to their sense of morality. The burden of longevity can make elves deeply flawed as well though. Some might cling to the past, refusing to embrace change, while others grow detached, struggling to relate to mortals with such fleeting lives. I like exploring those conflicts, the tension between what they once were and what they are becoming. Rather than narrowing elves down to a set of traits, I think about how their personal history shapes their view of time and relationships. Consider building your story around the weight of their choices and how their long lives create ripples across generations. But while elves may be graceful and refined, not every race thrives in elegance. Next up are gnomes, masters of invention and chaos. Gnomes are some of my favorite characters to write because they are so unpredictable. They thrive on invention and discovery, often getting things wrong before they get them right. I love writing gnomes who tinker and experiment, characters who are endlessly curious, but not always cautious. One gnome I wrote was a brilliant inventor, but his overconfidence led to constant problems. In one scene, his fail-safe invention ended up being anything but safe, opening a portal at exactly the wrong time and sending the story spinning into unexpected territory. It was one of those happy accidents in writing that became a major subplot. Instead of thinking of gnomes only as comic relief though, consider how their creativity can become central to your story. Maybe one of their inventions becomes the key to solving a major plot problem, or perhaps it causes the problem in the first place. And you can take this idea in several directions: a lighthearted subplot, a mystery around an ancient gnome artifact, or a dramatic conflict where technology collides with magic. The best gnome stories, in my opinion, often come from embracing the unexpected and letting their chaos reshape the narrative. Don't be afraid to let them disrupt your plans. It's where the magic happens. Now, as much as gnomes bring innovation and chaos though, orcs ground your world in strength and survival. There is more to them than just brute force though. Orcs have long been cast as brutal warriors and mindless raiders, but I think they have far more potential. For me, orcs are deeply tied to the land, the people shaped by harsh environments and long struggles for survival. I like to explore their connection to the homeland and the traditions they fought to preserve. I still have a story idea lingering about an orc historian who isn't a warrior at all. Her mission is to preserve her people's oral history as their culture faces extinction. While others fight with weapons, she fights with words, trying to convince rival factions to unite and protect what is left of their heritage. The stakes here can feel just as high, but also give me a chance to explore orcs beyond the battlefield. When developing orcs, consider focusing on their motivations and cultural complexity. Maybe they have sacred rites tied to the changing seasons, or a unique code of honor that creates conflict with outsiders. You can also explore their internal struggles. Perhaps an orc leader is torn between their duty to protect their clan and growing desire for peace. Orcs are rich with possibilities. You don't need to present them as either heroes or villains. Let them be both. Show their conflicts and contradictions, and you'll have readers questioning their assumptions at every turn. And from the battle-hardened orcs, let's shift to a gentler race, halflings, who may seem unassuming at first, but can pack a surprising punch. Halflings are often portrayed as the cheerful neighbors of fantasy, unassuming, content, and maybe a little naive. But what I love about halflings is how deceptive that simplicity can be. Beneath their humble exterior often lies surprising resilience and deep emotional complexity. You see, for halflings, I like to explore the contrast between their love for stability and their hidden potential for adaptability. Consider pushing them into situations where their instincts for clever problem solving come into play. They might not overpower an enemy, but they might outwit one by thinking on their feet or finding strength in their community. Now, from small but mighty halflings, let me take you to a type of race that embodies raw power and inner conflict. Draconic races. Part dragon, part humanoid, draconic races are a fantastic blend of power and vulnerability. I like to think of them as walking contradictions, both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Imagine a draconic character who can breathe fire, but every time he loses control of his emotions, it causes devastation. Instead of about suppressing his power, his story could be about learning how to use it without fear. This tension between control and chaos is where draconic characters truly come alive, if you ask me. What's fun about writing this type of race is how their heritage can shape every aspect of their culture. Their architecture might mimic dragon lairs with tall, spiraling towers. Their rituals might include fiery rites to honor their ancestors. These details make them feel rooted in the world. Here are some fresh ways to develop draconic characters. First, focus on duality. Give each draconic character a unique relationship with their power. Some might embrace it, while others hide it out of fear. Secondly, show how society reacts to them. Are they revered or feared? Perhaps their abilities are celebrated during times of war, but viewed with suspicion during peace. And third, explore personal stakes. A draconic character might wrestle with their destructive potential while trying to prove they are more than just a weapon. But the skies are only the beginning. Beneath the waves, another civilization awaits, one with its own politics, dangers, and magic. Merfolk can add an entirely new dimension to your world, literally. If your fantasy setting has significant bodies of water, why not explore what lies beneath? You see, merfolks aren't just humans with tails. They are an aquatic civilization with unique challenges and culture. When writing merfolk, consider thinking about their relationship with the surface world. Are they secretive and distrustful of land dwellers, or are they openly curious and eager to trade? Perhaps they control underwater trade routes, making them indispensable to coastal kingdoms. I'd also consider to give their society depth by focusing on the connection to the sea. Maybe the magic is tied to tides and moon phases, or the architecture consists of coral palaces and bioluminescent cities. The more you integrate the environment into their way of life, the more believable they'll become. And of course, don't forget about conflict. What happens when surface world wars begin to affect the seas? This can create rich storylines where merfolk must decide whether to stay neutral or intervene, and depending on how they react, they might be allies or villains in the story. Now, with the depths of the oceans covered, let me take you to the towering heights of giants and their kin, races that shape the very landscape they inhabit. Giants are far more than just big brutes. They are forces of nature with histories as vast as the mountains they inhabit. Their size alone makes them a spectacle, but it's their culture and the weight of their long lives that can turn them into truly compelling characters. Imagine a race of giants who once ruled the skies with floating citadels, now reduced to wandering nomads searching for fragments of their lost civilization. What happens when they finally discover a piece of that ancient power? How will the younger races perceive them? As mythic relics of the past or dangerous beings holding on to a forgotten age? Giants can also embody a deep connection to the natural world. Their cities might blend seamlessly into cliff sides or take the form of colossal stone monoliths that tower above forests. Perhaps their rituals honor the cycles of the earth, and their strength is directly tied to the land they protect. Equally though, the passage of time can be a heavy burden for them. A giant who remembers a world before a great cataclysm might be a tragic figure, haunted by what they couldn't save and watching history repeat itself. That long view on life can make them wise, but also hesitant, reluctant to take action until it's almost too late. Now, towering giants are still not the end though. Next, let me talk about a race that walks the line between instinct and intellect, the Beast Folk. Beast Folk are the embodiment of duality, creatures caught between their primal instincts and their human-like intellect. They can be fierce, cunning, or noble, depending on how closely they lean toward their animal nature or the civilized world. What's exciting about Beast Folk is their adaptability. Wolf Folk might live in tight-knit clans, valuing loyalty and hierarchy, while Fox Folk are solitary tricksters who rely on cunning to survive. Each type of Beast Folk can reflect different aspects of the natural world, bringing an untamed energy to your story. For example, consider a Wolf Folk warrior who struggles to control his rage during battle. His internal conflict between his desire to be part of a human society and his instincts to fight and dominate could drive much of his personal arc. Every decision becomes a question of which side of himself he will embrace. But Beast Folk aren't just about conflict, they can also offer unique perspectives on society. How do they fit into a world possibly dominated by human cities? Are they outcasts living on the fringes, or do they have thriving communities hidden deep in the wilderness? Through them, you can explore themes of belonging, identity, and prejudice. To make Beast Folk stand out, I would lean into their cultural diversity. Give them distinct traditions. Perhaps Wolf Folk hold sacred howling ceremonies, or Bird Folk celebrate the changing seasons with aerial dances. The more specific and grounded their culture feels, the more your readers will believe in their world. Now, leaving the wild and instinctual behind us, Tieflings carry the weight of their infernal heritage wherever they go. Their horns, tails, and glowing eyes might make them stand out, but it's a constant suspicion from others that defines much of their experience. They live in a world where every misfortune is whispered to be their fault, and every achievement is shadowed by doubt. One of the most compelling things in my opinion about writing Tieflings is how they walk the line between light and dark. Imagine a Tiefling scholar trying to uncover ancient knowledge to help their people, but constantly fighting accusations of dark magic. The tension between who they are and who the world believes them to be creates endless opportunities for conflict. But Tieflings don't have to be tragic figures. They can be defiant leaders, charismatic rogues, or even reluctant heroes who rise to the occasion when no one else will. Their complexity makes them perfect for stories of redemption, identity, and self-acceptance. Instead of focusing only on their infernal powers, you could explore how their heritage influences their worldview. Perhaps they distrust authority because of past persecution, or maybe they've learned to mask their true selves to fit in. These nuances will give your Tiefling characters depth and relatability. But having said that, let me take the last step for today into the unpredictable, dangerous, and whimsical world of the Fae. The Fae are a paradox, both enchanting and terrifying, bound by rules that mortals barely understand. They can be allies, mischief makers, or silent observers. But one thing is certain, they always act according to their own logic, even if it makes no sense to anyone else. I've always found the Fae fascinating because they operate on an entirely different set of values. Imagine a Fae Queen offering the protagonist help, but demanding something strange in return, such as a year of his laughter. He might think it's a harmless request until he realizes how much of himself was tied to that joy. The key to writing the Fae, in my opinion, is to lean into the unexpected. Their bargains should seem harmless at first glance, but carry hidden consequences. Their behavior can shift from charming to chilling in an instant. Unlike other races, the Fae don't have to play by human rules, which makes them perfect for introducing chaos and mystery. Here's some creative ideas for Fae stories. First, set clear but bizarre rules. Maybe they can't cross running water or must grant a wish if given a specific type of flower. Second, play with duality. A seemingly kind Fae might be the most dangerous of all, while a sinister looking one might turn out to be the only ally your characters can trust. And lastly, introduce bargains with rippling consequences. Let a seemingly minor deal at the start of your story come back in unexpected ways later. The Fae offer endless possibilities for storytelling, especially when you let their unpredictability shape your narrative. And if you want to build a fantasy world that feels alive without getting lost in endless details, then watch this video here next, where I'll show you the exact framework that helped me finish multiple fantasy novels by focusing on what matters most.